Hello there, welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to learn about Azure Virtual Machine Scale Set. To create the virtual machine scale set, you can either search here as a Azure Virtual Machine Scale Set. Later on, click on Add button so that you can create your virtual machine scale set. As a first step, you can add here your resource group. If you don't have, you can create one new one, and then you can fill the basic information. For example, in my case, I'm just filling here the virtual machine name as in my case, maybe I can give as a VM years. So what would happen is post to this name, it's gonna add a lengthy of other prefix. It just adds the some random number like 001 or something like that, and then it's going to create a different set of VMs altogether. So I'm just gonna select here VM years, and then the region as ECS, and also for the availability zones I wanted to choose zone 1 and 2. And for the image, in this case I can choose here my existing image as Windows Server as 2019. If you have your own images, you can also select, and if you select that, the limitation is 100. And if you use any of these images which are listed here, which are coming from marketplace, you can go for 1000 VMs as a scale set can be configured. And now I'm gonna fill the very basic things like the size and the username and the password, all that very basic. So I'm just gonna quickly enter all that information, username and password. If I have anything, I can add my Azure licenses. And coming back to the disks, yes, I wanted to have one additional disk to be added. Let's say I wanted standard SSD of 32 GB. I can choose, and this 32 GB is gonna add as the D drive with read write host cache enabled. And coming back to the networking, which is very important here, I'm going to actually choose here, if I don't have any of the VNet already created, I'll select one. Otherwise I can create by clicking on a new virtual network and give a meaningful name. And this is where you can choose your subnet, all that. And very important point would be load balancing. And if you do not have any load balancing, then accessing of these virtual machines will be difficult in terms of because these virtual machines definitely you might be creating in terms of considering either backend or front end solution. So it's better you will have some kind of as you load balancer or application gateway, you will have it. So in our case, I'm gonna actually demonstrate with the load balancer. So I'm gonna create by following this widget. I don't want to create as a separate NLB first and then attach it. If I do that, I'm actually gonna face an issue. Let's say if I want to scale up, so this VM set or VM scale set, let's say for the VM1 and the VM2, the natting of the different ports automatically doesn't happen. So I'm gonna choose the automatic option for that. I'm gonna actually choose here as a yes. And then the normal information, like for the load balancing name, I can give here by giving a proper name, like I can see here the same IP address or something like that, so that with this specific name I should be able to access from anywhere. If at all I have some kind of web application, I should be able to browse from this URL if I try to open from my browser. So then backend pool, I can give a proper name like a backend pool or something like that as a name, so that I know that the backend pool is gonna create. And coming back to the initial instance count, I can give here. And for the scaling, I'm going to choose actually manual or maybe custom. Let's see, custom. So manual, what happens is just a 1 or 2. So scaling is based on the VMs. Let's say this specific VM when it was created. If the CPU, the first initial count is just the one CPU, one machine, that's a one virtual machine, and maximum up to you can scale up to 10 machines to anywhere 1000. So if it's a marketplace, 1000, and if it is your customized image, you can go for up to 600 somewhere. And then the scale out is how that's going to happen is if the CPU threshold is reached to 75% of last 10 minutes continuously, it is staying at 75%, then it's going to spin up one additional virtual machine and wait for some time, maybe another additional 10 minutes, let's see. And if the cooling of this CPU goes down, that's fine. Otherwise, if this virtual machine also getting the newly created virtual machine also getting this similar load, it's going to spin up another virtual machine. So that's how it's going to scale up. So it's going to add 1 plus 1, 1 plus 1 based on the number which you define here. And coming to the scale down, let's say there was no load, so you can define if the CPU percentage going down to 25%, then what you do is reduce by one virtual machine slowly. So the newly created virtual machine or whatever based on the policy, it's going to actually delete the rest of those similar identical virtual machines. That kind of configuration you can do it. So this is where the scale policy, which comes as the you can delete from the fault domain Azure. Based on that, there are 3 different policies you have. You can do it. We are going to talk in the upcoming lecture. So remaining things are very similar except the health, which you can do it just to monitor the health. So let's create this scale set. So when I click on create, it's going to create in a minute or so. So let's take a minute to pause or fast forward. Maybe, yeah, it's got created now. And now if I go back to this virtual machine scale set, I should be able to see the number of virtual machine scale set at this point of 2. Might be, we added as a 1 initial, so it should be actually ideally 1, but when it was creating, if it found that CPU percentage is spiking, it might be created 1 additional, so that might get automatically deleted even after some time. So it's not that. And to connect it, if you see here, this is a public IP I should be using, but let's say within this instance you might have maybe 10 instances. How do you connect with a single public IP? The reason being, or the idea would be, in the back end actually NLB was connected, right? So you configure the NLB. So for the NLB there's a NAT, and within that automated rules will be created with this public IP. For each of these instances there is additional port will be created, so that port gets mapped with this public IP. So all you have to do is when you open MSTSC, you need to enter this IP address and the port of the NAT from your NLB. That's what you have to do it. And for scale up, again you have an option for the manual as well as the custom scaling. So we have to go for the custom scaling, so that you have you can basically configure 3 different profiles. One would be the default profile, which was created already with in terms of the CPU average with a 75% of the CPU spike, and instance count is increased by 1. That's a scale out. And coming for the scale in, it's gonna actually scale in of one virtual machine. It's gonna cool down. That's a cool down for 25%. That's what it was configured. And the maximum of the virtual machine spike can happen up to maximum 10, and the default count is just the 1, and the minimum is the 1 what it was configured in the default. Let's say you want to have one more also. What would happen? So you have to click on additional scaling plus add within the custom, and then you can go for scaling. So let's say now I want to connect to that instance. What I have to do is I have to go to my NLB and load balancing. That's my NLB, and then inbound NAT. If you see here, I have 2 different virtual machines with a different ports. So with this IP address, the NAT is happening on a port called 5002. If I just click on this specific one, I'll actually come to know what exactly the port, because this is actually coming from a name, but not exact the port. So if you see here, this port is mapped to 3389 port as a NATing is happening. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just click on my MSTSC, and then I'll enter this IP address with this port, custom port, and I should be able to log in and I should be also see the virtual machine basically. So I'm gonna enter the port as 50,002, and then I should be able to 50002 the port. I should be able to log in, and definitely it might not connect because you need to configure your NSG. So I'm going to configure the NSG to allow the specific port range. Let's say 20 machines I wanted to provision, so I just wanted to allow, and also the port 3389 just to connection to be happen, but you don't need 3389, just a port is needed, one port, that's a 50001 whatever the 10 machines, if so 10 machines port should be there. So the virtual machine got connected successfully. So what I'm going to do as a next step is, and if I see here I have two virtual machines, but in the backend pool is connected all that, and if I just expand here the backend pool, I should be able to see the two virtual machines. Let's say if the two instances are triggered, or maybe 10 of them, then you would see 10 different IPs of the private and different ports on different instances will run from your scale set, because the scale set is using this NLB, and availability zones also automatically sets for you. And now as a next step, I'm gonna actually configure the auto scaling as we talking earlier. We configure the default one. Now I'm gonna show you how we can configure other scale sets with other options that you have. So we configure the rules like 75% by default of the CPU time with the 10 minutes of average time. Then it's gonna hike one virtual machine of count. So that's what we have done. Similarly, even the cooldown also we configure for one virtual machine. Now let's have a look on the scale out. If you want, you also have different options like sum of the CPU percentage, all that options also you have, and that's gonna for entire scale set. So that's fine. I can drag and drop even my CPU percentage, and then the value gets automatically changed here within this matrix threshold. And I can specify the timing duration of how much time it should be there, the cooling, and also I can increase by the count and the percentage, and also increase count to straightforward to maybe 10 virtual machines or something like that. Even the decrease count also can be configured. So that's about the scale out. Now let's have a look on the scale in. So that's nothing but the reducing side. So let's have a look on. So if the CPU percentage is 25%, that's lesser than the 25%. For last 5 minutes, reduce the count by 1, and that's the instant count is going to be 1 will be reduced. That's how it's going to do. So you can configure very similar these kind of configurations. So that's a default profile. Now we're going to create one more profile by clicking add a scale condition. So this is where you can even rename this. Let's say I want to rename maybe in this case maybe a fixed one or something like that. I can do it, and I need to actually configure here the rules. So the rule is, let's say I want the similar thing I'm going to configure, but I might want it to go for, since it's a fixed, let's say I wanted to go for a date based. So I can give here 80% of the greater than that, and then on a specific time zone I can configure. So that's a scale out, and this is scale in. Once I have done that matrix, I'm going to actually configure the instance limits and time zone. So the time zones, let's say I want to automatically these settings should happen on maybe within this specific date and time. Let's say this should happen from December month because of the Christmas sales, and then I'm expecting this should happen on this time, maybe this to December to January between so and so time, and that's about the fixed one. Now let's say it's going to be recurrency. How do you configure? So for that I may have one more scale set option, and here also I'm going to create the add rules very similar the way we wanted, and I'm going to give a recurring scale profile this time, and I'm going to add the rule the way I wanted, like average or sum or last, whatever it is, just to give you an idea. You have multiple options for the scale in, scale out, but this is where actually you can configure the repeated on a specific days. Like maybe my web application which was hosted offering maybe a good sales as a discounts, maybe running on a Monday and Fridays, then you might be expecting a load. So in that situation, it's a good to use the repeated on a based on a specific days or a time. Let's say last month's of so and so dates, something like that can be configured based on the time zone on all of them. So I'll choose here maybe similar to IST, and then the timing maybe 6 a.m. to maybe 6 p.m. and that's how I can configure. So these are the scaling options. So I'll just go with the default thing. So I'm not gonna save it. So I'll just delete, and I'll show you in the default configuration by changing it, because that's easy for us to demonstrate here at this point of time. We don't need to do multiple things. So here, if you see here 75% and 10 minutes countdown, I did change actually this to 5 minutes. So it's going to monitor 5 minutes of if the CPU is spiked on 75% or more than that. Then what it's going to do is it's going to actually increase a count of 1 automatically. So that's the idea. So let's see what we can do is now scale period, also scale out and scale in. So it's going to decrease by 1, and the minimum is 1 virtual machine. So I'm going to save it. So let's see my instances. I have currently 2. It's going to delete 2. If you know why it's going to delete one of them, would be definitely because we said that at least the minimum as the, so we have it too. So maybe it's just spiked up the CPU. That's why it got 2 got created. If the CPU percentage goes down, automatically 1 gets wiped up. So that's interesting. So I will actually go ahead and connect to the virtual machine automatically with my NLB. So I'll just go to the resource and NLB. And I'll just copy the IP address of the virtual machine and the port. So in this case, the port should be the 3, if I'm correct, or 2 or 3. Yeah, that's a machine which I have connected. And I'm going to download a software called Heavy Load, which would actually useful in terms of testing. If you're trying to test the CPU load by putting some kind of stress on the CPU to take a lot of CPU power, this is the best tool. So this got installed now. So I'll just run that tool straightforward. If you see my task manager performance, the current CPU is just below 10%. So when I click on run with the continue, so it says a 3D graphics card is not available. That's fine for us. And you see here the CPU is going to 100% of the CPU spike. So currently it's just a 1 virtual machine what we have. If I refresh also, just a 1, and the time is just a 5 minutes now. So from the last 5 minutes I'm running. I'm still the virtual machine not yet got created. So the last 5 minutes we have been putting the stress on the virtual machine. Still nothing has been created. Now it's just started. The 2 virtual machines got getting created because it's a 6th minute which has happened here. So in any of the point, it's just gonna settle with 1 more virtual machine because we gave it as with only add as a 1 additional. So I'll just also try to connect to that virtual machine, and let me put 1 more time stress on that virtual machine also. So in that situation, what would happen is definitely it should gonna spin up 1 more virtual machine or more than that. So it all depends. So I'll just simply copy paste that heavy load application on this virtual machine, or maybe let's download. And if you see, the hard disk also got connected from the disk management. And what I'll do is I'll simply copy that tool on this virtual machine. And you see here 1 more also getting created because when I actually run on that second virtual machine also, it's been more than 5 minutes or so. So now additional virtual machines got also created here. That's the additional instances we can see, and that's good. So coming back to the disk, so this is a 32 GB disk got created automatically for every machine. And for the operating system, you can see complete details and the user ID. And if you are using any of the on-premises license as a hybrid, you should be. And if you want to change the size of that scale set, so you can do that. Coming back to the configurations, you can do the configuration if you want to change that to automatically update instances. You can do that. So you have all these options. Even you can check the metrics in terms of the CPU and all that. So this is very common of bleed options that you have with any of the Azure. And that's good. I think we have covered everything within this Azure machine scale set. That's good. So it's still running, and for the cooling period it's gonna delete. If you see here, it's got deleting because I have stopped the heavy load application. So in a minute it's gonna actually completely delete all those virtual machines, and it will end up with only one. Coming back to the scale policies, you also have here the policies that can be followed in order to reduce the virtual machines count. How do you want to delete? You want to delete by balancing the fault domain and regions and availability zones, all that. Or maybe the old virtual machine which was created, or just the recent VM which was created as an instance. And you can check the run history. So this actually talks about how many times it's a scale up and the scale down was happened, and all that information you can find out here in detailed information. So that's good. And if you are looking for anything to notify for your admins, let's say if the scaling is happening, then you can put alerts. And for the diagnostic, to collect the logs to your storage account, all that can be done from here. That's all about this lecture. I hope this entire lecture is useful for you. Thank you for watching this.